Hey art nerds, so I am right in between roughs and pencils, and I wanted to share my progress with chapter 8 with you guys. And maybe do a little bit of side-by-side comparison. So on the left we have my thumbnails. I still do thumbnails traditionally, and I use a thumbnail template for these that I print out on just plain cheap printer paper. Same goes for my roughs. I basically scan these, resize them to be 6 by 9 inches so that they will fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cartridge printer paper, so really cheap printer paper. And I just print them as blue lines from there. Hopefully you guys can see, maybe not so much with the cover, but hopefully you guys will be able to see that from thumbnails to roughs, sometimes a lot can change. Sometimes I end up adding pages to the chapter. So I'll just go ahead and flip through my thumbnails. As you guys can also see, I make a lot of notes on my paper. And when I've finished the chapter, I'll usually send it to a couple of my friends who beta read for me. And these are for my watercolor kidlit comic 7-inch Kara, which is about a diminutive little girl exploring the much larger outside world, making friends, having adventures. There's themes like mother and child relationships, child and father relationships, friendship. So it's just kind of a soft, sweet comic, really aimed at all ages. I have readers from the age of 5 on up. If you're in the Nashville area, NPL actually has copies of the first volume, and several libraries in Louisiana also have copies because I donated them. So feel free to ask for 7-inch Kara by name. And you can also read the webcomic at 7inchkara.com or 7inchkara.tumblr.com. And I'm currently working on volume 2. This is the last full chapter of volume 2. So here we have a thumbnail on the left and then the actual rough on the right. Tightened up the perspective. You guys can see the perspective grid lines on several of these panels. And to be honest, that is the part I dislike the most. It just really, for me, it really drags. So I really need to prioritize getting better at Manga Studio so I can use Manga Studio for my perspective grids, and then I can just print that out. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to scan these on my Epson large format scanner. You don't need a scanner that big, especially not for this stage, but for my watercolor comic pages, I find having a large format scanner is really best. And I'm going to take them into Photoshop, and I'm going to make corrections. Some of these need to be pulled out, some of them need sound effects added, some of them need to be restaged a little bit to be more, easier to read, or maybe I did the wrong outfit. Some of these roughs were done while I was really sick. I got a nasty virus right after MTAC, and I was sick for several weeks. But it was really important to me that I keep working on Kara, keep the momentum going. So I do have some corrections that need to be done, and I'm going to do those digitally. And lots of comic artists, see on this page I took out the going up the stairs panel and I just expanded the bottom panel out since this was kind of not necessary. But lots of comic creators do their entire process digitally. Some will work digital and traditional, varying on the stages. Some will do all their sketching traditionally and then print out their blue lines and ink that traditionally. So oh, this is actually an added page. So I have somewhere in here some thumbnails that I printed after I finished the chapter based on critique, and used them to improve the storytelling and the pacing a little bit. Can't find them right now, so that's not that important. But anyway, however you decide to make your comics is a valid and useful way. But there are loads of tutorials out there for those who are interested in working digitally. That's why I stay the course and continue to do tutorials on traditional, for the most part, comic techniques. And some of these are still very rough. I'm not super concerned about that because I'm going to re-pencil this when I print these onto watercolor paper, and I'm going to tighten certain things even further when I'm at the larger size. And when I print on watercolor paper, I use Canson Montval 11x14 watercolor paper for a lot of reasons. It runs through my printer, it handles watercolor decently, but one of the big reasons is it's affordable. And I have painted hundreds of comic pages by now, so affordable is really important to me. It also takes sharper detailed lines than, oops, sorry about that, sharper detailed lines than a lot of cotton rag papers will take. So, you know, that's kind of a triple threat combination of, like, I can do the work I need to do on the paper, and I can actually afford to do the work. Because this is a self-published project, a self-financed project. Oh, wait. I think, yes. And it's a really important project to me. It's set in my home state, Louisiana, in Hahnville, actually, which is where my mom grew up, and it's actually set in the house her father built from plans he designed. So he kind of dabbled as an architect, and he actually did several civic buildings in the St. Charles Parish area. That was not his day job. He was like an oil engineer. But I don't know, it was just really important to me to have so much of my life and my experiences and my family's life and experiences in this comic without it being autobio. So, I am not 7 inches tall. But there's still a lot of me in this comic. Like, I'm ADHD, Kara is ADHD. She's much more outgoing and adventurous than I am, though. So, in a lot of aspects, Naomi is more like me than Kara is. But really, what's important at this stage is establishing the perspective, establishing backgrounds, tightening up faces, although those can be done digitally, and sometimes it's a lot easier to do it that way. But every stage where I stop and scan is a good opportunity for me to make corrections, for me to make changes, for me to get feedback from other creators. And I really value getting feedback from other creators, especially people who do actually enjoy the work I do. Negative feedback, negative input, you know, if it helps me improve the story, if it makes the story stronger in the long run, if it makes me a better artist, those are always welcome. But, you know, people who just crap on your idea because they don't believe in comics for girls or comics for kids, or they don't think watercolor is viable or whatever like that. I mean, whether or not those things are true, that doesn't actually help you tell a better story. It doesn't actually make you a better comic artist. It's just their opinions. And those things do change over time. And I have loads of comic tutorials here on the channel and over at nattosoup.blogspot.com. I've been writing about comics and comic craft, comic creation for a really long time. So if you're interested, if you enjoy working traditionally, maybe digital just doesn't do it for you. It doesn't really do it for me. Then I definitely have tutorials to help you out, as well as recommended resources and books. But I highly recommend you check out nattosoup.blogspot.com before you email me, because all of that is there and all of that is here. So between the two, you should be able to find it. And having these resources available, creating these resources, is very time consuming, but it's something I'm very passionate about. Because when I was growing up in Luling, there just wasn't really any support for comics or illustration. And even now, it's hard to find work, especially in Nashville. It just seems like, you know, either they have no use for me whatsoever, or they've already filled the one job they had. So sharing those sort of resources, making them affordable, trying to keep traditional techniques alive for those who want to pursue them, that's important to me. That's something I will continue to do so long as I have the energy and the desire to do it. It's important, but it shouldn't kill me. And making comics, especially comics for kids that are not quite the norm, is also very important to me, and I will continue to do that as well. When I started doing comics, kids' comics were kind of like, okay, newspaper strips, and like, yeah, people used to do kids' comics, but we don't do that anymore because there's no money in that. So Kara has been going on since 2012. So kind of right after the manga boom tanked the market for styles that were not realistic. And that's since recovered in a lot of ways, but I just feel like it's always been kind of a struggle to get my stuff out there and to get people to look at it and to get people to engage. So, you know, it's okay. We'll keep trying and we'll keep putting things out there. And I don't normally share my roughs except in the context of the finished pages because they are roughs. There's a lot of ugly on the pages, a lot of stuff that's going to get resized digitally, a lot of stuff that's going to be corrected. Since it's not a finished product, I don't normally enjoy putting it out there for other people to be able to judge and to nitpick, because I do actually have people I trust for that. But I do think it's important to show different stages of comic process. Different creators work in different ways, and I know that my work process is actually extremely different from a lot of digital artists. I work in batch, so I'll complete all of my thumbnails, and then I'll complete all of my roughs, and then I'll pencil all my pages, and then I'll paint all my pages, and then I scan all of that, and then I do digital corrections, and I do digital borders with a custom Photoshop brush for that. I used to do that with color pencil, but I find I get a better result doing it digitally. And then I letter digitally using a custom font that I designed specifically for 7-inch Kara, and using watercolor paper resources that I scanned so that I could make it look like the lettering was actually done on the page. And a lot of people think my pages are hand lettered. They're not. I have terrible consistency when it comes to lettering, and my hand lettering is nigh unreadable. Even though I've taken classes on it at SCAD, it's still really bad. So a font worked for me. That is what I mean by you need to find techniques and tips that work for you and help you make the kind of work you want to make, because no one's going to come in and do it for you, and most of us aren't fortunate enough to have a mentor to guide our work and to provide feedback. So that is chapter 8. I'm going to check in with you guys once I have chapter 8 printed and penciled so you can see the difference. And then hopefully I will have some painting tutorials. If I can squeeze out enough space at my desk, I'll do some painting tutorials for you guys. So I look forward to seeing you guys then, and I hope you enjoyed this flip through. And I hope you guys will check out 7-Inch Kara at 7inchkara.com, 7inchkara.tumblr.com, or put in a request at your local library for 7-Inch Kara Volume 1. I'm Becca Hilburn, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye guys!